So thank you again for joining us today. Please do use the Q&A box to post any questions as we move through. We are now recording and we will be sending this recording out to everyone who's joined us. We're going to talk a little bit about a walkthrough of the NHA website. Please know that here at NHA, we are fully invested in the success for you and your candidates. We take a lot of pride in doing what's right and are not afraid to use our voice if it moves the industry forward. We are here, NHA and all of our teammates are here to help ensure that all of your learners, no matter their background or needs, feel confident and empowered to complete their required learning or earn their accredited certification. Today's session is being recorded. We will be sending that recording out to anyone who registered today as soon as we can, and also post it in our website in the resources section. If you can stick around until the end, we are going to be posting a survey link that if you complete that survey, you will be put into a raffle to win a $50 gift card. So please do stick with us through to the Q&A portion. We will post actually a second link for you, an optional information form for you to complete. If you fill that out prior to August 15th, you'll be put into a second raffle for a potential $500 gift card. So please stick with us through to the end and do fill those out for us. We host these webinars regularly. So take a look on our home screen, on our homepage at nhanow.com, and choose to subscribe for notifications for future sessions. You can also access our webinars and webinar schedule from the resources page in either the Resource Center or through our upcoming events platform. During today's session, we're going to review NHA, the resources that are available for you to provide to your learners. We're going to walk through your access to the website and how you can be fully enabled to run your program right from that platform. We'll even do a live walkthrough and again, get through to some Q&A. So remember to stick around with us to the end so you can get those links and get put into that raffle. We're going to do a brief introduction to NHA, who we are, where we're coming from. So we're going to go ahead and get started and explain that we have been around for a long time. NHA is the largest frontline healthcare worker certification organization in the industry. We have over 1 million certified candidates and are leading the industry in our content. We use the resources and information from our experiences and learning partners to create materials that widen candidate skills and abilities within the health field. We've also reached candidates with a higher potential to earn their nationally accredited certification when they leverage these resources. So they come in many formats, starting with our nationally accredited certifications themselves. These are broken into 2 sections. 5 of the 8 certifications fall within the practitioner side of frontline healthcare. These include medical assistant, phlebotomist, pharmacy technician, EKG, and patient care technician. There are also 3 certifications in an administrative capacity, and these include billing and coding, medical administrative assistant, and e-health records. In addition, we have developed comprehensive learning tools around key objectives for the healthcare professions that we serve. So these are all of the different learning tools available. These resources range from didactic learning in medical terminology or anatomy and physiology to the development of essential soft skills, as well as clinical skills for medical assistants, pharmacy technicians. We're going to be launching a medical administrative resource soon. These can be used across the entire learner's journey and can be provided together as a package or independent content to help those experiences from start to finish for your learners. Okay, so now that you've seen a little bit about our background, let's talk about these resources in more depth. So you should have already received confirmation from in an email format from nhanow.com to establish your administrative login. If you haven't seen this, please check your junk box or spam mail. This email will walk you through the first steps to set up that login, which you would then access at nhanow.com. Once you've put in your information, you have access to almost everything you could need to help your learners right from your home screen. This is your dashboard. It's broken into 2 main categories. The center of the screen will provide you quick access to NHA's supplemental resources. And this includes a kind of a rotating set of resources that include test plans that are potentially available to you. You can download right from here. We know this is an important area for you to understand what the exams will cover and to provide information to your learners. We know that this is important for you both. I wanted to call out some information around a study NHA recently completed that had over 6,000 candidates that we interviewed from across the country. And we uncovered some common themes there for some of the biggest hurdles that they felt prior to taking their NHA exam. So these are kind of some of the most frequent options that we saw. And from this list, the highest consistent response was test anxiety, a low confidence to pass. We know this can be addressed through preparation and is one of the many reasons why it's a best practice to get your candidates into their NHA accounts as soon as possible. NHA will begin at that point to send them welcome emails, information on study habits and preparing for their exam. Here's just some of the hundreds of comments from that survey that focused on uncertainty, not just around general anxiety, but knowing if they're prepared, have they learned all the things they need, and concern about making it through a timed exam. Providing the test plan and NHA's resources or learning tools have shown to make a positive impact on not only the confidence level, but the exam outcome. So again, this Get Started area will rotate resources throughout the calendar year. It provides you access to quick links around first steps, frequently asked questions, resources on testing or implementing materials. Scrolling down your page will show you some of the most used how-to resources that will walk you through the administrative steps you would need to manage your NHA account. There is also a library of all of our helpful walkthroughs, how-to PDFs and videos readily available to you. This is where you can find important documents, implementation guides, and scrolling down will even take you to video tutorials. Selecting this link will take you to those additional tools right there. So see implementation guides and exam study materials. All of the study material has supplemental resources and they can all be found here. Just select the certification type that you want and you'll be taken to view any of the additional documents available to assist that particular type. It will start with the implementation guide. So these guides are available to you free. They will outline content, implementation suggestions, and even the average time it can take for a candidate to navigate through the study materials. Here you can see a snapshot across just 4 of our 8 certifications and the time it can take the candidate to work through just the study tutorial portion. This can range widely. These guides are available for any of NHA's learning tools. This library of resources, as I mentioned, has additional tools for you as well. Scrolling down this page will take you to video guides and PDFs to help you with the mechanics of the website, including setting up the learning content, providing access to candidates, opening exam dates, monitoring applications and results. Further down this page will also take you to the candidate-facing resources tagged to their accounts for you to help prompt them to use their materials and accounts to their fullest potential. The NHA exam online study materials are based on the test plan for that certification. They include an interactive study guide as well as series of practice tests, all designed to look and feel just like the exam. This package also provides the NHA Focused Review, which is a personalized study feature to help candidates as they navigate through their practice assessments. These tools should be assigned digitally to each candidate so they can move through the materials on their own, as well as provide adequate reporting for both group and individual learner growth. That focused review is a secondary tool separate from the study guide and is specific to each practice test attempt to help candidates focus further on those areas they may still be struggling in. Those learning tools are available for preparing for any of NHA's exams. But let's take a minute also and review some of those other materials available from NHA. Starting with the core learning. We have learning content focused on medical terminology and anatomy and physiology. These address just the right amount of content for learners in entry level roles through interactive and engaging online materials. There's a full pharmacy technician suite of content that start with inherent learning on becoming a pharmacy technician through the pharmacier. This was designed to meet the ASHP didactic standards for learning in this critical role. Partnered with that primary learning tool is something around medical math, dosage and calculations called the Pharmacier Math. This can be partnered with Pharmacier or as an independent learning tool. There are skills developers for your medical assistants as well, which include the MA Skills Builder Clinical. It provides an interactive learning experience across 12 engaging modules. It's designed to help develop and execute 39 clinical competencies that employers are needing in an entry-level medical assistant. Coming soon is also the medical administrative skills developer. Though we know clinical skills are essential, administrative duties are a large part of the MA's role. This tool is also applicable for your front office administrative staff. The MA Skills Builder admin will use an experiential training tool to focus on key skills and competencies so learners can master the technical and job-ready knowledge. Additional developers or career laddering options include providing upskilling and professionalism, starting with personability. This is available in both a clinic or pharmacy setting and uses online simulations and role play to develop abilities in teamwork, emotional intelligence, and communication. You can ladder this further by leveraging Principles of Health Coaching, another immersive learning tool with realistic scenarios to continue learning in communication, but also population health management and motivational interviewing. If you are within a patient-centered care environment, any member of your care team could deepen their understanding of what it means to work in this quality versus quantity setting by using team-based care. For all of the core learning resources, NHA also provides implementation toolkits that can include downloadable and editable PowerPoint presentations aligned to the core learning, optional lesson plans outlining the core content and suggestions for implementation, additional testing banks and resources to implement, activities to help scrub and polish the learning, walkthrough videos unique to the product content, and mapping resources to accreditations, possible textbooks, and test plans. In fact, we have mapping resources for our exams as well, found right next to the implementation guides called alignment guides. These are unique to the certification type and include an outline of the full test plan, identifying how many scored questions there will be on the exam in each core domain. This also will map out where in the NHA study guide that content is covered, and if there are any additional resources within the learning to help with the process, including videos and games. It's a wonderful tool to use to align your candidate learning, as well as review any program content to ensure there aren't any large gaps in the learning materials. There is also open columns for you as well. So you can plug in where in your book or week or program you are covering this core content. We have full program maps that you could use to implement any or all of these products and help with the learner journey from start to finish. This is just a snapshot of an example of what it could look like for a medical assistant journey, leveraging these materials from start to finish. Okay, now that was a lot of content there, real fast and heavy. So I did want to just check in with everybody there. I'm going to ask a quick question For those of you who are with us today, go ahead and just align with me. What is your role there at the institution? Are you is this a classroom educator? Are you a coordinator? Select the item on the screen there that is most closely aligned to your program or to your role. And that way we'll be able to, hopefully, as we move into the live walkthrough, address any questions that you may have most specifically. Just give you guys a second. Excellent. All right. It looks like we have a nice blend here of administrator, career counselors, classroom educators. So wonderful. Thank you guys so much for responding to that. Hopefully we can get to some content that really kind of touches on your biggest needs here. So we are going to be sending out a survey link at the end, as I mentioned. And in that, if there is anything that I just talked about, any of those learning tools or resources or reporting features that you want one-on-one or further training on, put the information in that survey so that we can reach out to you directly and make sure that you get something scheduled with either one of our team members or with your direct contact here at NHA. So that survey is going to have a spot for you to put that in. Make sure you fill that out. Okay, so we've reviewed the resources part of your administrative dashboard, but the left-hand side, the other portion of it, is your navigation bar. This is where you can find administrative shortcuts, from reviewing your inventory and creating courses to pulling reports for your program and study materials, monitoring your candidate applications as they come in, viewing exam results, depending on your role, adding or removing additional users, and even viewing your exam calendar, creating test dates, or proctoring the exam. In fact, right from here is where you can get your learners started with creating their personal logins. You can invite them to set up their logins well before providing any learning tools through the account invitation feature from this home screen. This helps to ensure that all is ready to go when it's time to start their studying. So I mentioned earlier, it is a best practice to get your learners set up as early as possible in those personal accounts. We have seen that statistically, those who do are more likely to take their certification as well as earn that certification. All right, so we're going to go ahead and get into a live walkthrough now of the website itself. So as we're going through this, if you have additional questions, please be sure to post those so that we can make sure that we're addressing those questions right away. I'm just going to pull over here a live walkthrough. This is a real experience here we're going into. We can see here we have those learning tools. As I mentioned in this center section, these will rotate throughout the year based off of our most frequently asked questions and needs. So right now is kind of what we would label as a peak testing season. It's kind of a typical testing time for your standard universities or colleges. So we have a lot of content in here around testing. Our most used how-to resources are right there. Again, how to add or remove users. You've got lots of additional tools, and there's the library that I mentioned earlier. This is the vault of supplemental resources. Everything you could need that is applicable towards that learning process that NHA has already created is right here. Ensuring your devices meet system requirements, implementation guides and study maps, which we talked about. If there's any supplemental accommodation requests, which we're going to talk a little bit about here, and an exam ready checklist. What do I do? When do I do it? What are the best practices? I mentioned those how-to videos and guides for you, as well as those for your learners right there. So lots of great information right from your home screen. But let's take a look at this navigation bar on the left-hand side. So right now we're in your dashboard. You can go out to our main NHA website right from here. And also if there are any notifications or NHA's Help Center. That's where we're going to go next. So the Help Center is where you go, guess what, for help, right? If you need a password reset, you want to check the FAQs, contact anyone. Hopefully you've noticed there's been a live chat feature kind of hanging out on the right-hand side of the screen this whole time. This will connect you to our customer service team. We have additional forms and technical requirements. So those additional forms is where you would go if you did have a candidate, for example, who needed a special accommodation request. If there was an incident during an exam that the proctor would need to fill out, or during a remote test if something went wrong. So there's lots of different forms and resources here from your account. That's all available right from the Help Center. So as we progress through our learning journey, we've already invited our candidates to create their accounts. The next step is going to be making sure I have the inventory that I need to provide to them directly. So I want to double check what my institution has already purchased to provide. So for my institution, we do the medical assisting and billing and coding exam. We've got an active billing and coding course right now, and I've got 10 MA resources waiting to be provided to additional candidates. I can see I've got just 10 entries here, but I can stretch that out and look across the full suite of material. What inventory do we have? What resources are available? So I always want to check that inventory first. And the reason why is if I do add a candidate to a course through this platform, but I didn't have any inventory to give them, well, guess what? They don't get any inventory, right? So we always want to check that first to make sure that the process is as smooth as possible. So here we can see some courses that have been set up. I can view the existing courses here or create a new course. So when you're going to create a new course, this is simply setting out the shell or the home of material that you want to provide to your learners. You need to give it a course title, that's a requirement, but the start date and end date are optional. That end date is the last date that you would hope a student would be in this material, but it does not revoke access from anyone who is enrolled. That end date simply is a visual aid for you and your learners about programmatic completion. From there, you turn on your material. We have our fields of study around the different certifications, and then additional learning tools that we mentioned earlier. Any inventory that you add to this material will be provided to your learners if you have it. So if you have that inventory, putting it in here, inviting or enrolling students into this will give them one line item from your inventory. So don't add stuff that you don't want everybody to gain access to. Once you've built that course, it will then show up out in your courses space, and that's where you can enroll your students or candidates into that course roster. Enrolling is a pretty simple process. There's two main ways you can do it. You can see here I have 3 candidates already enrolled. If I have already sent out my account invites to my learners, they can request enrollment right from their home screen. They would show up in a pending status here that I could then approve or reject. Approving a student then moves them into the enrolled status, and we'll pull one layer of inventory and provide it to them. I can instead invite my candidates. This is going to look very similar to what we've already seen. If I go to invite, I can just put in their email addresses here. And from there, oops, I had one too many .coms. I can check addresses and it will do a quick audit of our candidate database. Is this an existing candidate in this course? Does this candidate already exist in the system? A different invitation will be sent depending on that status. New account creation request, or please click here to access your learning materials. Either way, they'll receive an email. So they do want to kind of keep an eye on their junk or spam mail just in case. And they have to click on the link within it in order to gain access to that learning content. So once they've done that, that's when they'll show up on your roster in the currently enrolled status. So that's how we get them into the material. So from here, oops, I did not mean to do that. Sorry, guys, we're live. Let's go back in to our account status. There we go. There are some other pieces here. We're just going to continue down. The results button here is where you'll see the Learning Insight Center. This is our central hub of analytics. Today's session is not on reporting. We are going to have another one next month or maybe the following month on reporting. So check our upcoming webinars. What we're going to do then is take a look at our candidates. We've already invited them, right? But now as we've navigated through the learning, it's time to start looking at setting up the exam, which is the next phase. So the first thing I'm going to do is actually check my upcoming exams. I want to make sure that no one else at the school has already created my exam date. So here I can see that I've got a date coming up here in April. Registration is closing today. So far, no one has applied to that test. That's because we moved it. So I know this is not surprising to me, but I can only see a 30-day window. And the reason why is that 30-day window is our minimum best practice recommendation for how far out an exam should be created. If it's 30 days out and your exam has not yet been scheduled, then it's time to do so. We can stretch this out to a full 90 days. We do recommend getting these exam dates scheduled as soon as possible for your learners to apply to. So you can see here, we've got our open exams, and I'm going to go and actually create a new EKG test because we're moving it out. So that's what we're doing here today. There's a couple of interesting things to note from this page. You can always see the exam date. This is the date the test is going to run. The application deadline is the last full day that a candidate could apply to this exam. They have through 11:59 p.m. Central Time. NHA's main headquarters is in Central, so it's Central Time, to apply for that test. Overnight, that night, it will close registration, and from there, no new candidate can register or apply for the test. So I want to make sure that they're doing so in advance. I can see my test method and the test status. There are 3 statuses this will be in. Right now we're open because registration is open. But once that application deadline passes, this will transition to a closed status. And that's when my roster will be visible to me. That's when I have an action item to go and review the roster and approve or reject candidates as needed. Now I can see that I do have someone coming up here in May, and I want to double check who that is. So we're going to get to that in just a second. But before I navigate out, I know that we're going to have an exam for EKG in May instead of in April. So I'm going to go now from the upcoming exams to request new exam. And this is where we establish those exam dates. So I'm going to go ahead and open up my exam date. It's going to occur May 20th. And the application deadline, which I mentioned before, this is always needs to be the week before that exam to allow for all of the automation and overnight systems to occur and make sure everything is ready on exam day. So the minimum registration deadline, that last full day they can apply, really is 8 days before the exam, because registration will close overnight and officially be closed 1 week prior to the test. So I'm going to set that. The exam time is an open alphanumeric field. So you can put South Campus, 8 a.m., whatever you like. It does not tie to the exam directly. It does not affect the exam in any way. It is simply a visible field for your learners to have information. For example, if you're going to have more than one test run on a given day. The purchase order number is an optional field as well. You would only put something in there if you do have a PO that you need tied to that finalized exam roster, because we can't add a PO after the roster has closed, so we need to add it here. The number of available computers is the maximum head count that my campus can hold in the testing space. So if we only have 10 computers, don't put 15 here. If I have 15 candidates, well, then that means I have to have 2 test dates. So I know what my maximum head count is for computers and proctoring. And then I'm going to turn on my certification type and request new exam date. Now this says it was done, but how can I check? I'm going to go back to upcoming exams and make sure. There it is. There's my test. It's open for registration, and I can now tell my candidates to go ahead and apply for that test. If you remember, we had somebody who'd already applied to that MA exam, and I want to see who that is. Now, my roster is not yet available. It's not going to become available until that application deadline expires. But so how do I see that? Well before the exam date. Right over here in View Exam Applications, I can always see who has applied or hasn't applied to an exam right from here. This top box is going to show me anyone who has applied for a third-party application. So that means testing off-site, not testing proctored on-site by one of my staff members, but instead testing through our third-party agency. Scrolling down is where my on-site exams will be listed. And I can see here, here's Marcia. She's applied for that test. I can see the exam date that she's applied to, and she is still in pending status because we've not yet approved that roster. I can filter this by any of these columns. I can filter it by certification type, date, whatever I like, or even download this in an Excel spreadsheet or PDF for further use. So I should always be able to see who's on my roster well before registration closing. That's one of our most frequent issues, is that registrations have closed and a candidate has not yet applied. And it causes some potential errors with the test even running if we continue to open and close registration. So the best practice is to make sure that your candidates know when that registration deadline is and that you are monitoring those applications well before the test. Now, once they have tested, I can view their exam results right from here. And this is where those scores will load. Now, we've not had anyone test yet, but this is where those scores will inevitably be once that happens. So it's just a brief overview of where all that information is coming up. Now, once exam day occurs, I will approve those rosters right from here. I can select my roster and I'll be able to locate my date and approve it. I don't have any active rosters right now, so there's nothing to approve or reject. Now, if you recall from your dashboard, we had all those how-to resources, right? Explore how-to resources right there, how to view exam applications, how to invite candidates, or any of the steps that we just went through has a PDF or a video to help you with this process. As I mentioned earlier, one of the biggest items that we haven't covered today is reporting. We do hold additional webinars focused just on this process. So for now, you'll know that the moment a candidate accesses their study materials, no matter what the content, reports will begin to load for you. These include filterable tools, downloadable PDFs, deep analytics to provide you clarity in your learner's process. NHA's Learning Insights Center, as I mentioned, has reports that highlight, among other things, progress through the modules, performance in assessments, and time spent in study. So today is not about that content, but we will hold others. If you want to have a one-on-one training with that, put that into that survey link we're going to post here in a little while so that we can be sure to follow up with you and get that scheduled. So before we get to Q&A, I wanted to reiterate that this has been recording. Anyone who registered for this session will receive that. If we need additional questions, we're gonna have lots of time for Q&A, so do stick around, we'll be able to address those. We are gonna post those links in the chat box. If we could go ahead and get the first link is gonna be the survey for today's webinar. Now remember, that is gonna put you in a raffle to win a $50 gift card. But we're also going to put a bigger survey for you to fill out more information about your program needs. Filling that out is going to put you into a raffle to win a $500 gift card, as long as you do so prior to August 15th. So please fill those out for us. So as a reminder, we want you to know that you have the ability to address your questions when they happen. So we've already reviewed those how-to resources, right? Those are your self-guided tools, your first line of defense for the mechanics of our website. There's lots of great stuff in there to use throughout the program with best practices, even who should or shouldn't proctor an exam. Now, if you don't find the resources that you need there, remember that live chat, our help center, they are available to help. They are not a 24-hour center, but they are extended hours. So do check them to see if you do have an urgent issue around logging in or anything that you might need that would be more urgent. This group of people is an incredible group of people, all located here in the US. They respond as quickly as they can. Typical wait time is around 30 seconds. In addition, you have your client executive. If you don't know who your personal contact is, please post that in the Q&A, or you can post it in that survey link. We'll make sure to connect you. They are here to help with all the tools and resources that you need. So if you, again, want any additional training, let them know, put it in that survey, and we'll be sure to connect with you. I do want to thank you for being with us here today. We know how hard you guys work. We see it. So please know that we are seeing you, and we're so thankful for all that you're doing every day, putting yourselves out there, working crazy hours and doing crazy things for your learners and staff. So thank you so much for being here. And I thought we could just take a little bit of time before we wrap up to talk about what, if there have been any questions, please feel free to raise your hand. We can also take you off of mute if you have specific questions you want to cover, but we do have a team here ready to answer them at need. So has there been any real questions through our session here today, guys?
No, Laura, this is Mary. We haven't seen any questions come through yet.
Okay, so now's your chance. Are there any questions, guys, before we close up today's session? We'll go ahead and wait just a minute. Looks like we just got one posted. So it looks like we have a question on invoicing. So we're talking about invoicing the exam or invoicing the study materials. There's lots of potential invoicing depending on how your program is set up that you may have. So again, that a lot of that is based off of your program. If you're set up to be invoiced on an exam day, for example, or invoiced in advance, that is really dependent on your independent kind of institution, and your client executive is whom you would reach out to talk and ask a little bit more about any invoicing questions you may have. All right, so I think we're going to go ahead. Oh wait, both exam and study materials. Okay, so I'm seeing there's a question here in the chat about who can or should pay for the material. So the institution has the ability to purchase everything on behalf of their learner. You can pre-purchase the study materials, exams, it all is dependent on your program. If your program doesn't have the funding to do so, but you still want your students to access this material, they can purchase it independently. It's a slightly different process to do that, but a lot of that is, again, dependent at the exam level.
Laura, there was a question posted in chat. When you have more than one test run on a given day, do you create a separate roster for each?
Yes, that's a great question. Yes, we would recommend that you have an independent exam scheduled for each test running, just to help with the ease, both for registration as well as for your proctor. If you are going to have more than one of the same kind of exam run on a given day, label it here in the exam time field. So if I was going to have an MA exam, for example, run on let's just put a date in here. Right, so June 1st, and that week before June 1st is going to be here for registration closing, and I'm going to have a 10 a.m. test because I have 20 learners, but my campus can only hold 10 students at a time. So I'm going to set a 10 a.m. exam, and I'll schedule one for the afternoon. And now my candidates, when they're going to apply, they'll see the MA exam labeled at a 10 a.m. time slot. And when I make my next test, it'll be labeled for my 3 p.m. time slot. So yes, we would recommend that you do so, just so that your students know when to show up and they have that information available to them. Now, if you're going to run multiple test versions, this is a slightly different question. Not all exams are the same time, right? So the billing and coding and medical assisting exam, as you can find on the test plans, which I can show you where those are again, those are 3-hour timed exams. But EKG and the CMAA, those are 2-hour timed exams. If I have an EKG test running at the same time as an MA test, where they both start at 10 a.m., well, compliance with our proctor manual says that candidates have to wait until the test is ended, which means that those EKG students who end somewhere between 1.5 hours to 2 hours have to wait until the MA exams are done. So unless you have a second proctor who can be there to escort the students out when they're finished, then all students have to wait until the full exam is done. In this instance, we would recommend that you go ahead and schedule them independently so that no student has to sit there and twiddle their thumbs for a full hour, right? Does that make sense, Shelley? Perfect. All right. We're going to go ahead and close up the recording here. I have no problem staying on if any other questions are percolating that you haven't quite answered, but please know we are going to be sending that out. Please go ahead and fill out those survey forms that you saw.